You know nobody's coming ever to rescue you, right? Nobody gets a flower.
Hanrahan.
Today we speak to naturalist activist Nadia Shaikh. She talks to us about the English right to roam movement because the countryside is actually ours.
Firstly, I think the most important thing is to, unfortunately, a lot of people don't even know what right to roam is, not just your campaign, but like as a concept. So can you explain to us, like, what is right to roam?
It's wild, isn't it? Like,
it's a shame.
The fact that people don't know speaks to, we've had to give something which was just what humans did, a name.
Yeah.
Right, which was to be able to like exist within a landscape, the land that we are, and explore and move about it in a very natural way. The right to roam, I guess, now concept is that we're having to overlay a campaigning message or a justice issue onto something really basic, which is the right to access and be on a landscape. And the reason why it is a campaign is because we have a system of property ownership in this country which has been built over hundreds of years, where if you are a property owner, you have the right to exclude people from that landscape. But the right to roam is the idea that even if somebody owns the land, doesn't mean you're not allowed to be on it. I guess.
So you can essentially just go for a walk through it, camp on it, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Why do we not? I think it's something like 8% or something, isn't it, that we're allowed to?
8%.
How did that happen?
It sounds even better, or like more dramatic, when you're like 92% is off limits.
That's crazy.
You know, like this whole idea of like England is full, like there's no space. You're not seeing 92% of it.
Yeah. But even if you're here, you're not allowed.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. What was the question though? You said.
Well, how did it become like that?
Yeah. So it's a long, complicated history. The kind of summary version is that England was mainly once a commons, a shared common for all, which is that it's where you would go and forage food and graze your animals, and then you can live in a subsistence lifestyle, which is still the same in other countries, but increasingly less so as the world has become westernized. And the idea that we are free to move about as a people from village to town to countryside. And then this idea of, well, when power starts to gain its self-power, you kind of want to keep it. And all of our power and wealth ultimately comes from the land beneath our feet. It's where our food grows. And so we had this increasing system of individuals occupying land and being able to get wealth from that land by the people that live on it, growing food or being able to take a certain amount of their money from it. And what puts that at risk is if you are a human that isn't embedded into a place or tied to it, you can just go somewhere else and be like, well, I don't like this land. I don't like this lord over the land who's got a say over how I live my life. I'll just go over here. And so increasingly over the last 100 years, people have been not allowed to do what they want on land, pushed into wage labour, and then you're kind of tied to a place because you can't grow your own food or have your own house. And so, increasingly, England became a country where landowners and estates got bigger and bigger and bigger. And with that idea of property came a whole bundle of rights. And, one of the rights of landowners was to be able to push people off it and say, you can't even access it. Never mind grow food, build a house, or gain wealth from the land. You can't even walk on it. Yeah. It's a threat to the idea of property ownership, which is kind of a mythological thing. No one can own land.
Yeah, exactly.
It's here forever.
It's our land.
Yeah.
Like, we're here, it's our land. That's the way I see it. And I think that's why I really like when I look to right to roam, because it's really annoying. It's insane. Like, you have to get like a license to go camping and stuff in this country. Like,
to pay. So if you're going for a walk and you're tired, you can't sleep.
It's insane.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. And I think that's not even necessarily a big political thing. It's like, if you want to just be a free person, you're still not allowed to do that.
Yeah.
You can't even sleep in the grass.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It's
crazy.
why historically Romani gypsy travellers have been targeted as a community of people who have been demonised. This goes way back, because they're the first people who roamed freely, which really challenged the concept of power. Of, you've got these little fiefdoms across England, which is like the king's close buddies, which still exists today. It's like, it's your pals, it's the lords, it's all your like friends. If you just roam and forage where you want and eat and sleep where you want, it challenges the idea that that's their bit of land that they can own forever.
It's mad, yeah. It's like, yeah, you can just mind your own business, but they can't even do that. Do you know what I mean?
Right? It's like, I don't want to do that thing that you're all doing. I'm just going to do my thing. You can't.
It's crazy.
And because now we live, like the humans that we are today, we live such separated, like it's so managed in a way, like where we buy our food, and we're all quite happy to pay rent to landlords. And like pay huge amounts for, like if you want to buy a house, it's not the value of the house, it's the value of the land that is under the house. We're so separated from it that when you say like it's really important that we can go on for a walk and sleep under the stars, it's like, is it that important? And it's like,
yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, exactly.
Thousands of years of doing it, and then this tiny little period where we don't do it anymore. I do think there are a lot more people in recent years I have seen start doing it. I don't know if it's because Arc'teryx looks really cool, and I do notice they get very geared up to just go camping. Do you know what I mean? But I think there is a change. But again, we're so far removed from it. Do you know what I mean? What kind of thing do you think nature essentially? I mean, it might sound obvious, but there are so many kids that don't even go out into nature. What is it you think is so important that it brings to be out in nature and be around it?
Oh, it's quite a deeply complex problem, but like on the surface of it, being in nature removes so much of like the modern stuff that's been overlaid on us in terms of like the anxiety that we have around like how we look, worrying about work, worrying about school, worrying about like we're living in this constant anxious state of like input, triggers, noise, sounds. Our brains evolved to be in nature. For a human to survive in nature, you've got to be really aware of the weather, the landscape, where the fresh water is, where the food might be. Like
what's poisoned, what isn't.
Poisoned, exactly. And to retain that knowledge, so to notice the tiny little like lichen or flowers, like as a species, we're really good at like foraging when we're tapped into it, which is our brain's happy state, which is you're not thinking about tomorrow or for WhatsApp you didn't reply to. You're thinking about, okay, let's look at the landscape. Where's there going to be fresh water? Like, where could be a nice place to camp tonight? Like, we need mindfulness because our brains have got to stop. They've got to have a break.
That was baseline before, right?
Just baseline. Yeah. And then every now and then a threat would happen and you would be like, this, or you'd worry about, like it's the end of like a certain season, so you're waiting for the next food. There might be some consideration of future events, but we are a species that's naturally in the present. We're not worrying about what we said yesterday or what's going to happen. And so being in nature is like, honestly, it's just your brain just being able to switch off. And nature does it pretty rapid. Like it's got quite a good way. I mean, I used to do environmental education with kids, and teachers would be like, we'd get kids out on nature reserves and they'd be like, this kid does not participate in class, or this kid never behaves like this, and they've just come out the classroom and immediately they're like engaged in what I'm teaching them, and they're like, doesn't work in front of a whiteboard. And that's also because of like, the sound in rooms is not good for some kids, or like that learning experience isn't. So it's vital for us as a species to like switch off from all of the stuff, and then also to be able to critically look at that stuff and go, do I need to invite that back into I've just been away camping for a week. When I go home, do I want to be like that again? And it allows you to like critically reflect on the differences of the way that we're living now.
I totally agree. I'm a big advocate for that. I always say, like, I don't know anyone that doesn't feel better after like being in nature. You know what I mean? Even if I don't like the bugs, I don't like this, I don't like that. In that moment, I'm pretty sure you felt a lot better than being sat at home like click, 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 click. You know what I mean?
They call it type 2 fun, don't they? Where you're like, there's type 1 fun where you're enjoying the thing while it happens. Right. Type 2 is like you've gone out and had a really gnarly day, got wet, and you get home and you're like, that was great. That was great,
right. I guess it's like delayed gratification, essentially, But with the kids, though, there's a young lad in my family, he's 6, and he went to one of these kind of farm-type schools. It was essentially like a nursery. It was a nursery on a farm. And he's only 6, and the other day I was walking with him, and he was like, oh, they're not nettles. And I said, they look like nettles. He's like, no, they're not, they're this. And I touched it, and he was right. I was like, it's not a nettle. Yeah. And I was like, that's incredible. Like, I didn't, we don't live in a rural place by any means, So I was like, that is such a useful bit of knowledge for him to just have. He might never need it, but I thought, how nice is that? Do you know what I mean?
And the self-esteem that he's got of like, I could teach.
Yeah, he was genuine. He was like, that's not it. You know what I mean? Very confident with him. I was like, yeah, it is. He's like, it's not. And I was like, touched it, and I was like, oh. It's like, you're right, you know what I mean? He's 30 years younger than me, but he's right, you know what I mean? Yeah. So how did Right to Roam form as like a campaign as opposed to just the concept?
So this current iteration of the campaign is like been running for 5 years, but people have been fighting for land access way longer. But what's written in the history books isn't written by the peasants. So our kind of history and record of like peasants revolting or people fighting back against this increased land ownership and pushing humans out of the land, towns and villages. You've got to remember, England was once, our rural areas was way more populated than it is now.
Yeah.
Like there's this idea that we've got a huge population and there's too many people, and you're like, and the countryside is like a threat. And I'm like, no, the countryside used to be full of people working the land, living on the land. And, you know, throughout history, there have been periods of people kind of fighting against that, but it's not necessarily massively recorded.
Levelers and diggers.
Yeah, and then way more examples, which we just know aren't recorded.
So we didn't get taught any of that.
No, exactly. But I guess there's a couple of like big trespasses in the last 100 and so years, or instances. The Winter Hill mass trespass and the Kinder Scout mass trespass being the one that's widely
What were those?
advertised.
Sorry, I don't know what they were.
The Kinder Scout mass trespass, was 93 years ago now, which was like 500 working class people from Sheffield and Manchester who trespassed in the Peak District to be like, we work in factories all week, we should be allowed in the countryside. So that 8% we were talking about, the 8% of England that we can access, was hard fought for by those trespassers.
Just the 8%?
Yeah.
Christ.
So the Countryside and Rights of Way Act is the law, the bit of law that says we are allowed on mountain, moor, heath and down in England. And that gives us just under 8% of access. But prior to the Crow Act, we didn't have that.
There's nothing.
We didn't even have that. We've still got a footpath network, but like it's the rights to have open access, this kind of concept of open access land where...
Go off the path.
Go off the path, yeah. And so there have been like these campaigners in the past who have, they probably wouldn't have called themselves campaigners. They were just like a bunch of people like...
I said, fuck this.
Fuck this, we're going out. And it was like people got beat up and imprisoned, and it was quite like gnarly. And funnily enough, at the time, you know, people were like, oh, they shouldn't behave like that because we're never going to get what we want if they behave like that. But now it's celebrated on the BBC every year for the anniversary. So there have been these moments in history, but this current iteration of the Right to Roam campaign, because actually land access has largely dropped off the radar. This is what happens in politics and legislation. There's cycles of interest in things that come and go. It was plastic pollution for a while, it's now rivers, but like there are these things. But currently, access being back on the agenda, it was pretty much Nick Hayes and Guy Shrubsole sat around a dining room table. They were both writing books on... Nick was writing the book of Trespass, which was talking about what is this trespass law that we've got, or like this idea of trespass, and then Guy was writing a book about who owns England. We don't know, we don't have knowledge. It's all hidden about who owns the land in England. You know, you have to do heaps of research. You can't just go and find out who owns stuff. You have to do quite a lot of digging or pay for the land registry to find out who owns land. So they were like, maybe it's about time we restarted this like fight for more access to land. It started with the Kinder Scout mass trespass and trespasses of the past. And, you know, nearly 100 years later, we haven't got much more. So we've got to start challenging this again. And so for the last 5 years, we've just been kind of copying a tactic that worked in the past, which is civil disobedience and trespass, and demonstrating that when 100 people go for a walk on a bit of land, see, the world didn't end, right? Like, we can do this. And so, and we are where we are now.
I like that. It's like a next gen, like the Neo version of, that's really cool. So you have this concept, I wrote it down here, it's peaceful trespass, right? What is that exactly?
Well, so trespass is just a civil offence, right? It's not a criminal offence.
Can't go jail for it.
Can't go jail for it, unless it then becomes aggravated trespass, which is you get asked to leave and you don't, destruction of property or stopping any actions that are happening on the land. So we are just going for a walk. We're proving the point that this idea of trespass, like you can't go there. It's like, oh no, look, we can.
Yeah, actually can.
We just did. And so one of the things that we replicate as a campaign is that just over the border in Scotland, they have a right to roam.
Yeah, they can go everywhere, right?
You can camp, swim, kayak, canoe in Scotland.
So it does work.
Did Scotland end? It's a comparable country culturally and habitat-wise. The Highlands are different, but 80% of Scottish population lives within the central belt and the borders, which is habitat similar to England. So it's this argument. We can have this argument, but the Scottish Land Reform Act said you can go anywhere, but you have to follow these rules, and they set a really good robust set of rules for modern human, which hasn't been in the countryside for a long time, which is the Scotland Outdoor Access Code, which is like, you're not disturbing livestock, you're not damaging crops, you don't put your tent next to someone's house. It's like really reasonable
Obvious,
stuff.
yeah.
So your rights only exist as long as you follow the responsibilities. So we follow that same set of responsibilities whenever we do an actions in England to demonstrate that this is a totally possible thing. And obviously we want to be peaceful. Like we're talking about like spending time in nature. It's a peaceful thing, right?
Yeah.
It can get rowdy. Commoners of the past, they would have sex and do all kinds of wild stuff in the countryside, which is maybe we want that back again. It's like a third.
Should at least have the choice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah.
Why is it Scotland is just they can all do it and then like we can't over the border here?
Well, it's really interesting. So, I mean, there's loads of ways of looking at this. Like my kind of musings around it just generally is like Scotland were colonised by England. So Scottish people have got a bit of a resistance, probably a bit more of a cultural resistance and a bit more of a more recent memory of the clearances compared to England.
Right.
English people were also colonised by English power.
That's what
right?
I always say. Like,
It's the heart.
We were the victims of this too.
Originally.
Yeah.
And then they learn, you push people. Oh, if you take people away from their ability to grow food and build a house, then they're at the behest of me. And everything that they earn, any money they've got to buy food has to come from me.
Yeah.
So and they're like, okay, so if you also clear people from the land, you take away their connection to nature, their like folklore, their sense of self, their sense of belonging, you really manage a population quite well, right? So we learned it here and then transported it across the globe and obviously over the border in Scotland. So prior to the Land Reform Act of 2003 in Scotland, the law of trespass was similar to that of England. Differences in Scotland is they did it anyway.
Okay.
They just used it was like a customary right, which is like, the law's a funny thing. No one 500, 600 years ago went, right, we're going to write the law. It doesn't work like that. It's a law of negatives. So incrementally over the time, a new law, you can't do this. A new law, you can't do this. This is how the law works. But yeah, I guess Scottish people just... it was quite part of Scottish culture that you get out and you enjoy the landscape and it's our land, the mountains, the hills, the rugged coastline of the West Scotland. Like it's part of Scottish
culture.
It's like in like folklore and tales and like storytellers very much kept it way more alive than they did in England. So even though prior to 2003 it was the same law, English people just got into line and behaved a lot more. So what happened in Scotland was there were quite a few more foreign investors buying up land and estates in Scotland and then putting up fences. And Scottish people were like, hang on a minute,
not here.
We need to secure this. And we actually, if it's going to get taken away, we need to enshrine it in law to make sure that we have a right as opposed to a customary right, which is just things we've done.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a easier ground to make, but they still had to campaign hard politically to get it. There's still people that go, no, we don't want to get, they're doing it, but we don't want to give them a right to do it.
Yeah.
It still had to be hard fought. So yeah, there was quite a different climate in Scotland for it, but it does, give us at least somewhere to go, okay, it's possible.
That's the model.
Yeah.
So did you say 2003 they got
Yeah.
that? That's not even that long ago.
Not that long ago, no.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow. This is the thing that really annoys me because our actual culture, as you said, back in the day was like folklore and same way with the Scots, and the Irish, like in the nature. I'm a big fan of like the levelers and the diggers. I remember reading about that and I was like, right, so English people did rebel against the monarchs and that, but we never get told any of that. And then I was like, well, is it because of the monarchy? Like, I read a thing about the duchy and all of this. Like, some people say that like, the monarchy owns most of England. Is that even true?
They don't.
They don't.
They're
Okay.
one of the biggest. They're a big landowner, but there are many other big landowners. Duke of Northumberland's the biggest landowner. Duke of Buccleuch is a big landowner. There's landowners with huge estates, but deeply connected to the monarchy, right? The date that we go back to is 1066, William the Conqueror coming over and just splitting England up between all his friends and allies so that then they could have a workforce if ever they needed, or an army if ever they needed to fight to protect the king. A third of England is still owned by the aristocracy, which is this like fake thing, which is just basically friends and pals that aren't great people.
It's just been going on ages.
We've still got it.
It can end quite easily. The French, the French did it, but you know what I mean?
We weirdly celebrate it. Like, there's a whole culture in England of like, who, still love and revere the royal family, but not just the royal family, they're like, they love old families. They'll go to an estate and be like, oh, it's been in their family 500 years. And I'm like, why is that correct?
Yeah, so what?
Yeah, why is that correct? And so they've now got a right forever to like get, you know, public purse money just because they had the land a long time ago. It'll never be ours.
Yeah. I think that's such a good point. I'm very anti-monarchy, but I think the problem is people over-politicise that, so it becomes like left-wing anti-monarchy, right-wing pro-monarchy, and it's like there's so many people I feel like if you actually explain to them like if you really want to be free and like proud of where you're from, England, you want to care about your heritage. You actually wouldn't be pro-monarchy because it would make no sense. Because as you said, we were the petri dish where they started stepping on our heads, and unfortunately over the years, you're right, like Brits have just gone like, oh well, you know, and it's like you said in Scotland, you actually can do something. Yeah. And like that's what I like Right to Roam. It's not like some insane, like, we're not trying to start some like anarchist utopia. It's like, I just want to be able to walk on the land, you know. I think that's such a great thing. Where is it headed for you guys? Like, what are your plans to try and actually put things into play? You know, it sounds great, don't get me wrong, but what are your like things you actually want to do? If someone's a part of this, what can they do?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, one of the reasons why I think the campaign is so affected is that we are a one-issue campaign.
Yes.
With like a million underlying issues, of course. But like, we want primary legislation that says it is our right to responsible access to England. It's a default right with sensible exclusions, as opposed to a default exclusion where we're allowed to go some places. Okay. We're flipping it. So it's a default, you're not allowed to access at the moment, but you can have this bit and you can have that bit. We want a default right, and then we can look at it and go, okay, well, that makes sense for us to not go there. Makes sense. We can understand that's a Ministry of Defence bit of land, or that's a quarry. Fine, take that.
Whatever. Yeah.
Do it that way around. So, I mean, ultimately, that is what the campaign is calling for, and we won't stop for anything less than our rights to be reinstated. And we kind of work from the bottom up and top down. I mean, the bottom up is like the groundswell of public, you know, most of the public aren't aware of how bad the situation is, and like don't really see it as a problem. They're like, and what's the problem?
Yeah.
And you're like, well, if you haven't enjoyed something for 4 generations and I'm telling you, hey, you should enjoy this thing, they'll be like, go away. Yeah. So there is this mass education of like helping people understand their landed history, why access to land is important. I mean, this is one puzzle piece that in 400 years or 100 years' time might mean that we actually get the land back of the aristocracy. But we have to do it incrementally, right? But all we're asking for at the moment is to have this relationship again where we have a sense of self and belonging, which we are losing and we have lost. In terms of how people can get involved, the bottom-up stuff is read about it, talk to people about it, you know, get involved with understanding where can you go locally, challenge why you can't, go on trespasses. Why did Scotland win a right to roam? Because people were doing it. We could also win that. If everyone tomorrow just went out and did it, it's unpoliceable. It would have to come right.
That's right? it. So make it unpoliceable, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But also there is a top-down bit, which is the boring behind-the-scenes stuff. We're looking and writing policy and going, right, if it was enacted next year, what would we have to do to help farmers make their land more accessible, put in fences? What's the funding model? Like, how would we how would we now start educating children in schools? What does that policy look like? What does it look like for dogs? So we do all of that stuff, and lobbying, talking to MPs and decision makers, DEFRA. So there is that stuff behind the scenes, which is like maybe less sexy than trespass, but also important.
It's got to be done.
It's got to be done. Like, you know, there's a lot of people that are like, just the system, like, it's fine. I'm like, Scotland has it based on working with the system. So we could also go down that route, which is, I guess, is asking for that.
So we live in this, it's not going away anytime soon. Yeah, it's more realistic.
Which is hard as campaigners, because you do get this like weird breadth of people that are like denying the system, let's create an alternative world, and people that are working within legislation. It takes everything.
Sure.
And so we have to be in this space at the moment. And, you know, we literally talk to MPs and say this is an important issue. In your constituency, 102 constituencies in England have no access land. 102 constituencies. So we need to get people to tell
None at all.
None at all. So we have to tell MPs, your constituents care about this. This is what it looks like. These are the green spaces in your constituency. So the health of, you know, there's something like £8 billion a year the NHS spends on health issues related to a sedentary lifestyle. Like, your constituencies need to get outdoors.
Mental health is a big issue.
Mental health,
you feel better in nature.
Yeah, like literally sometimes I will be having one of those days where I'm like, could murder anyone that WhatsApps me. And then I go for a walk and I'm like, oops.
Yeah.
It was just a walk.
It's that bad.
Exactly. It's quite embarrassing.
Yeah.
There is this huge piece of work around, you've got to start telling your MP, hang on a minute, this isn't right, this is something I want to change and it matters to me. And you know, politics, think about the way you want, but the reality is that MPs are people. A lot of the time, they're not aware of issues. They can't be aware of all the issues. They're just human. So go and sit down.
Busy buying their kids' AirPods and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So go and just sit down at their surgery and go like, so this is your constituency. This is how much access land we've got. We're a big group. We care about it. We care about it for this, this, and this. You can read about it here. You know, you can go and do that stuff as well. Yeah,
I love it. I mean, I'm sure you guys have got it all dialed in, but I'm just thinking, like, areas like where I'm from, I think it would be particularly, it would make an impact. I think people listen. For example, I'm from the East Midlands, the North Ants, and it's a lot of places are like this all
Not
over
a lot
England.
of access land.
Not a lot, but
Not
it's all around us.
Yeah.
So I'm from like not the city, the towns, but that's like a very urban area, urbanised area. You know, you don't really see much grass. There's 15-minute drive outside, beautiful land, like, you know, but it's like, it doesn't feel like that's anything to do with us. But I remember, you know, when we were in school, we finished school, one time, you know, we got a load of bikes and we were like, let's ride to the posh bit, you know what I mean? And you know, we rode out to the countryside and we went swimming in the river, and, you know, last summer, me and my mate got a canoe, and it's like, no canoes here, we're like, oh, fuck that, let's go, you know what I mean? And that's not because we're like, right to roam. I think there's just this kind of thing when you do live outside of where the nature is. I notice a lot of young lads going, I'm going to do that anyway, because they are little rat bags in the best way, you know. And even there's every summer there's like a kind of a lake nearby to where we're from, and you just see every summer there's just lads all around it. They're all in like tracksuits, 110s, all sat there fishing. Yeah. You know, they're smoking weed, they're fishing, they're having a great time. It's like, I know these lads. A lot of these are from like, you know, council estates, working class areas, but they just know, well, we can go up there.
Intuitively.
Yeah, intuitively. That's my point.
I need to get out. I mean, I used to work on a nature reserve just outside of Birmingham, like it was in Sandwell Valley. And, you know, it was a nature reserve, so the rules are always just like, you know, you can't have fires, you can't do this. And then this posh person came in and they were like, there's someone having a fire. And I was like, right. So I went up and it was like a young lad, maybe he's 14, 15. I was like, he should be in school, having a fire. And he just had a packet of beef mince. Yeah. And I was like, cooking. Are you all right? And he was like, yeah, I'm fine. And I was like, okay. And I was like, and I was like, you know how to cook that through so it's not raw? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, will you put that fire out afterwards? And I was like, cool, cheers. And I was like, and then a kingfisher flew past. I was like, did you see that?
Yeah, amazing. Yeah.
And then, so rather than go, this is a nature reserve, you can't be here, he's a lad from like the local street. Like we talk about kids like, oh, they don't know anything these days. They never get outdoors. They sit on their phones. But then when they do,
you tell them to fuck off.
You tell them to fuck off.
Yeah, I know exactly. And that's the thing. We are allowed to be there. I feel like I'm maybe a bit of a little shit, but I do think like, oh, the law said that. Like, I'm allowed to be there. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like for thousands of years before that, we were allowed. That little bit of legislation, that doesn't mean anything to me. And I think there's a lot of people that do think that, not on some criminal vibe. Yeah. Like you said, they're just
It's just a civil offence. It's between you and the landowner.
Yeah, they just want to be there. Yeah, it's like, I just think, it's such an obvious thing. The only problem that I see a lot is rubbish. Like people leaving rubbish out. Like every year, me and my mates, we go to the fields even. Some are little, you know, like throwaway barbecues. There's like loads of other people doing it. Unfortunately, you do see a lot of lads just leaving shit behind, you know. How do you tackle that? Is that like education or what?
I think so. I think being left behind in the countryside, which by the way, it is minimal.
It looks bad though. I see a lot of it. It looks bad.
So what you could go for a walk every day and see the same crisp packet.
True.
Right?
True,
so an impact of a bit of plastic, which can persist in the countryside for 50 years, is... If you looked at one of the reasons why we have such bad wildlife and biodiversity decline, so take it from like a litter's ugly, fine. That's because whenever we see human things, we kind of don't like ourselves. So it's like rats and pigeons. We find them annoying because it reflects the dirtiness of what we've done. That's all it is. It's an internal reflection of, God, we're doing bad stuff.
Right, they go in a sewer that we made.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, you know, so we've got some of the worst biodiversity in the world left in England, and that's habitat fragmentation, habitat loss, pollution and intensive agriculture. It's not crisp packets and Lucozade bottles. Sure. Whilst they're ugly, and I appreciate that, it's not my main concern my career is as a naturalist, ecologist, ornithologist. My worry for birds isn't crisp packets, right? It's pesticides and herbicides and it's destroying habitat. That's what it is, right? And so, but the litter problem, like I just see that as, that is just our penance. So we have to deal with it.
Yeah.
So that if you've got a population of young people who are leaving litter, And they either think, oh, I don't care, or I don't know it's a problem. Well, we made that culture.
Yeah.
So now we have to deal with it. Not be angry at the kids.
Sure.
But like, go out and pick the litter up. Like, when I go out on a walk, I can pick up like 10 bits of litter, and then the litter's gone. It's not the council's responsibility. It's not some other problem for someone. It's like, as a member of this community and as a member of the society who also buys plastic when I go to the supermarket, I'm happy picking it up. Like, it has to be something that we all go, how do we solve this then? As opposed to, oh, let's just keep people out the countryside in perpetuity.
Just in case.
But then we can educate. But then we do need to educate. If you think like we've been separated meaningfully from the countryside for like 5-6 generations. So it might take us so we need to think long-term thinking. So we've got 5-6 generations to start talking about litter in school, to start like teaching people how to like cook a packed lunch confidently, so you're not like buying stuff, and maybe, you know, like we can do all of this stuff, but it's going to take time. We can deal with that. It's not insurmountable. But the majority of the plastic really that we've found when we've gone into the countryside trespassing, it's cartridges from pheasant shoots and shotguns. It's the plastic that's left on silage bales. Like a lot of the waste that we see like in farmland, agricultural land, is farmland waste, and it isn't litter based. But there are these hotspots, you know, the river that everyone wants to jump in. Like, what a beautiful thing that young people are like, it's hot, should we go to the river?
Yeah.
And then
great.
they leave a bit of litter, like, okay, we can do something, we'll chat to them next time and have a friendly chat. That's fine.
That's a great way. I never thought of it that way, to be honest. I just see it and I'm like fuming.
Yeah.
Like, how dare you do this to our land?
But
Like,
you're angry.
Yeah.
So you should be angry.
Yeah.
What have humans done?
Yeah.
That's the anger that you're feeling.
Yeah.
But then sometimes we just need to think like, hang on, where's that coming from? Where do I redirect it? Which is anger anyway. Like, it's an emotion that we have. And every time we have it, we have to go, what made me angry? Because anger is a secondary emotion. What made me angry? Like, what's the thing that's happened, and where do I need to channel it? And, you know, that's
like a chain reaction.
Yeah.
It's funny, I feel like now things have changed a little bit. Like, there's, you know, I hate this thing, but a lot of people are, oh, there's like some hippie shit. But I've noticed that has changed quite a lot, you know, like, a lot of friends that I have back home, you know, in the East Midlands, you know, to be honest, where we're from, Kettering, it's a very low opportunities area, very low education. We went to a very shit school. But I've got pals there that are like fully tuned in with nutrients now, and they know how to avoid, or best as they can, avoid microplastics. And these are like tough lads, you know, but they just gone like, hang on. And ironically, they saw a lot of it on Instagram, and now they're like, what am I eating? You know, and I'll be eating something like, don't eat that, bro. And I'm like, oh, mate, leave me alone. But they are right, do you know what I mean? And I've noticed that, and a lot of them now are starting to get like, you know, they might take, I don't know, like a dirt bike up there, but they'll go to the nature, do you know what I mean? And I've noticed there's this almost, I feel like there's a really perfect time, like at the minute. I don't know if you guys have seen that at all, but lads I never thought are really getting in tune with nature, you know? Like, I have a friend, Chris, that he can tell you every berry that's out there, and this is a very combative man. He's a street fighter, from a tough lad, and he knows everything. And with that, he's also got back in touch with like English folklore. You know, he's telling me about the Green Man, and he's telling me about Morris dancing. And then when I look into that, that's really interesting. Yeah. Do you think like it's a cultural loss as well? Maybe like I feel like that kind of stuff wouldn't happen in an urban town. Do you know what I mean? It's like it was a nature-based thing.
Yeah, I think
like
so.
The real culture of England.
But like nature was the root of everything that we had, right? Like it was, like the folklores that we would tell each other was to keep ourselves safe and united as a community in a wild environment, right? Like we had really united bonding stories. Stories are the thing we have in common.
Yes.
Right? Stories are the thing that like you'll tell me something, I go, yeah, I know, like, you know, what's happened to me. Like the things we have in common, and the nature that was around us and the folklore that grew from that were the tying things. That slowly evolved over time to like monarchy, patriotism, capitalism. Like now we worship those things, and I do think that that's reached a limit of like, hang on a minute, I've got no gratification anymore. Like I can't afford housing. Like my body feels shit because I'm just eating shit food. Like it reaches a point where when you start to lean back out into like looking at what am I putting in my body, and then you're like, oh, that feels better. And then someone says go for a walk, and they're like, oh, then you start getting these positive feedback loops as you go back out into nature. And what you do find is that like, you know, like group of lads might go out and then they start building little like cultural traditions between themselves. It's like, we always go fishing here, or we always go do this. And it's like, that's what humans have done. They've built stories that have bound themselves in natural places. That's what humans have done, in a place, in a niche. And that does, I think, like it makes sense that, you know, we've all gone like this and we're all slowly bleeding back out in nature going, oh, that feels good. And like, if you put pressure on something, it will escape at the point that it escapes. And, you know, for like men that, you know, have lived really difficult lives of men in terms of like not being able to be vulnerable and how they look after themselves, how they communicate with one another, which for men often is easier out in the outdoors when you're walking and you're not looking at each other in the face. And nature makes people a little bit more vulnerable and a little bit more sensitive. So like, of course, people are going to go into, I think it does make sense that you will start finding these spaces and communities which start making you feel good, a little, you know, as opposed to the thing that you were doing, you know.
Yeah, there's a new thing actually as well. I've been to one of them in Manchester. It's called, like, they call it the Men's Social Network. It's kind of a little bit of a joke. The first one was quite a religious affair, but, you know, with anybody, it's not like, you know, they're like Christian, Muslim, whatever. And this lad, he's like a former, like, I don't know, British soldier or something like that. But he just, you know, he just said like, oh, there's all this kind of issues with mental health. And he just said, right, he's going to start a thing. You have to be there 8 a.m, rain or shine, in the forest, you know. But it is good to have that, making lads actually get up and go to it, you know. And it's been so successful. Ironically, Tommy Robinson jumped on it. And to be fair to the lad, he was like, no, we're not about that. He's like, we don't care where you're from, whatever, you know, they've got Iranians there, they've got Muslims, they've got everybody there. And they do like kind of wrestling in the forest and they go on a big run. And at the end, everyone just sort of stands there and just has a chat. And it's like, you know, there's no government-backed thing behind it, and it's not particularly original thing to do, but it's spreading like wildfire.
Amazing,
yeah, there's one in Edinburgh, there's one in Glasgow, there's one in Manchester, and this has been going 6 months, you know what I mean?
Wow.
And when I just went to one of them, and, you know, met lads I'd never normally meet and sort of thing, and I realised, like, yeah, people, not just young men, but like people really need it, you know what I mean? And I do think it's great to see it coming back. It's just, that's why I think the right to roam is so important, because there's more than just the relief. Again, like you said, it is our right to have that. And I don't know if people understand it yet. Maybe they will, I don't know. I don't really have a question, I'm just rambling.
Right.
But
No, it's cool, it's all right.
I wanted to ask about the books. You got one book, Wild Service. That's a little bit different to the other one I saw. What is Wild Service?
Yeah, so Wild Service was a book that came out of, like, we'd been talking throughout the campaign, like, obviously we want our rights, and land justice is a problem, there's great inequity, but what was always underlining it was like, a lot of the criticism is that we get back is that you want rights without responsibilities and nature's going to be in trouble, and we're like, we are nature. Like, humans have been alongside nature all of this time and it's been fine. When you operate with kindness and reciprocity, nature thrives. And there's often this like lamenting of like, or we look to indigenous communities around the world that still live alongside nature in a reciprocal way. And we're like, oh, isn't that amazing? I'm like, we did once have this. We also did once do this. Like, we're not incapable just because we're like a westernized, urbanized people. Stick someone in the woods for a week, amazing things happen to their brain in that short period of time. And so I guess we wanted to recognize that it's not just about going and consuming the outdoors for our mental health or taking from it. It's about rebuilding a meaningful relationship with it. So we do also become guardians of the environment around us, because at the moment nature's in free fall, total free fall, and the majority of the population aren't seeing it happen. They don't even know. They don't know what a cuckoo is or a nightingale is. So why would you know that they've declined or care? Or why would you know the wildflowers that have disappeared? Because you've never seen them. And so we need to now have eyes and ears in the countryside, and it's our responsibility to start taking care of it. And I guess it's a bunch of essays by different writers to just demonstrate the different ways in which we can have a relationship with nature again. And it was really a book to just go, stop being so misanthropic, stop hating humans. Humans aren't bad, they're great. The system is a problem. When you put everybody in the system, it becomes a problem. Like, you know, like fast fashion, like intensive agriculture, like junk food. Like, there are systematic problems, but the individual people's consuming aren't a problem. But these are ways that we can have a relationship with nature where nature benefits. It's not this idea that humans are bad and nature's pure. No, we are nature, and actually we can live alongside it. And I guess it's trying to like encourage people to get rid of that. We've got a lot of people that support the campaign. They're like, oh, no, but won't it be terrible? Well, no, it won't be terrible. Got to try and dispel this idea that we are irresponsible. I'm not the one that's the reason for intensive agriculture since the 1940s. Like, I would grow my own food, but where's my land?
Yeah,
I can't afford that. Yeah, if you don't want me to buy fast fashion or whatever. So where do I get my clothes from? What do I do? Like, what are these systems? How do I challenge it? Also, I'll buy the really expensive clothes that don't damage the environment. Great. Well, I don't get paid enough, right? So it's just like
it's all set up to fail, isn't it?
Yeah. The individual isn't the problem, and yet and there's within the book there are a series of like anecdotes to be like, here's just one human that has done a vast amount for wildlife in their local area or for nature or connecting people to nature. Imagine if everybody started going, I can do that, right?
Yeah.
Like, the lads that you're talking about meeting in the woods, if that wood was at threat of development, who would be the people that stand up for the woodland? It'd be the men that's in the woods.
It would be
right?
them. They
Exactly.
absolutely would, yeah.
This is what happens when our greatest nature movements, our nature reserves, our knowledge of species, of wildlife have come from not people paid to do that job, but people that knew it, loved it, and went, hang on a minute, you can't do this. So what if more people started going out into nature and going, okay, I'm going to be a guardian of it as well, which is the most human thing that is human, is that we've always lived alongside nature in reciprocity. We've as a species, we've known you don't kill all of the things or take all, because then you've got nothing left. We've known all this. It's just recent history that's forced this kind of mass annihilation of everything. And the individual, when they have a sense of belonging in England and go out and do things, do incredible things.
I agree. I used to think, have you ever seen like Dark Mountain Project? And this
Yeah.
I used to be really into that. And again, I think it's really relevant, quite interesting, but I was very nihilistic about it. And then it's like you said, I realized well, actually, there's a reason, we're addicted to this and that and that. And it was set up that way, you know, and it's like, you'd have to be superhuman to be able to resist it at every turn where we are. It's a weird one. How did you get into all of this, if you don't mind kind of explaining your history? Because I'm so interested in this. I'm very relieved that, I really like the vibe. Like, a lot of these groups, I feel like, unfortunately, spin too much into, kind of partisanship, or they get so broad that it's almost like, what were you about again?
Yes.
Yeah, and I really like the way you guys do it. Also, it looks cool, all your iconography. That's such an important thing, it really is.
It is, isn't it?
It's so important.
We're attracted to things.
Why else would you not look? If it looks shit, you go, fuck that.
Yeah, or like corporate.
Exactly.
We are 6 people, we're just 6 people.
Well, it's
six
great.
folk.
I think it's great.
We don't have an office or anything, we just work around, we live on our own homes and stuff like that. So I come from a working class background, and I'm half Pakistani, half Geordie. And never really was never really encouraged to be outdoors. Like, we were not an outdoorsy family. Like, my dad's Pakistani, and spending time outdoors wasn't necessarily part of his culture. Not Pakistani culture as a whole, but certainly to come to this country and assimilate as a British person. You're an urbanized person. And then my mom's side of the family from Jarrow, which is tradespeople essentially is my family, and spending time going into nature, doing hiking, the stuff that white middle class people do. It wasn't necessarily the only thing we did, but from a young age, I remember stuff just fascinated me. There'd be a spider on the wall, and I'd be just drawn to it. And I don't know what that means, but I was just obsessive about it. And then so I grew up really liking wildlife, but with a whole adult world around me who were just not interested. And then when I learned about the RSPB and birds and bird conservation, I was like, there is a whole career path that I can have. This was oh my God, I found my people. This is great. So I went into nature conservation, fell in love with it entirely. Finally something that I feel I belong, it makes sense. And spent many years in nature conservation, just kind of worshipping it as I'm a savior. I save wildlife. I feel really good about myself. And then as I got older and I guess maybe more politicised, and I say politicised, which basically just means you're aware of injustice.
Sure, yeah.
I remember the first time I realised that the monarchy was a really stupid thing. And I was I think it's because I was challenging religion. I was so God chose the royal family, they're ordained by God.
I don't think he would.
And I was but I don't think he's real anyway.
No, I don't think if Jesus come back though, even so, whatever you believe, I think he'd be get them out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I didn't pick this.
Yeah.
You're the problem. So I think, so I did start just becoming more of a questioning, challenging person as I, ended my early 20s. And as I progressed through that decade, you work in conservation for so long, you're every year nature's got this bad headline after bad headline. This charity's been around for 120 years. Nature's still declining. And I was I think I just started thinking critically. I was what are we doing? What are we doing wrong? Why are we still fighting? Why do we not exist to solve a problem? Why do we now exist in perpetuity to just fight?
Yeah.
And I was why can't we just fix this? Like, why is it sanctioned and allowed in this country to have the wholesale destruction of nature? Like, oh, that woodland's been cut down, or this has been polluted. And I'm like, sorry, who is doing this? Why, like, what's going on here? And I remember I started challenging within the organisation, like, I think, we need to understand how when nature declines, it in fact impacts people, modern people. And then who are the people that own the land that are doing the bad things? Because there's only like one person that'll own a big bit of land and then they get to destroy the nature. Who says that they can do that? And I remember like pushing those buttons going, we need to look at land ownership. It didn't really get me anywhere within the organisation because the Western conservation methodology is very much protectionist. It's quite nostalgic. It's like, take this nature reserve and we'll just keep it like this forever and then don't give a shit about what's happening everywhere else.
Sounds very counterintuitive.
It's just like, hang on a minute. And then I think I got more deeply uncomfortable about how I couldn't talk more radically and politically about land ownership and who was doing the destruction and being more transparent with the reality of you've got this estate that's 30,000 hectares, 200,000 hectares that's used for grouse shooting and birds of prey keep getting shot, which is illegal, but they're getting away with it. And because of them managing this estate for grouse, they're burning the vegetation, means when it rains, the rain runs off and floods the town. Why are they allowed to get away with that? It was just like, this is stupid. And then I started learning about who owns England and
that's why they get away with it.
And I was like, you start to understand how power operates in this country, which is, you've got the House of Commons, which is commoners supposing, you've got the House of Lords, which are lords and historic landowners. And I'm like, right, okay. And so, yeah, I just became aware of all of that stuff. And when you see it, you can't unsee it. And from someone where I've always been proud to be like, I'm an advocate, I'm a voice for nature that hasn't got it. If I'm truly to be a voice for nature, we need to go to the root of this problem. And that was clearances, enclosures, land ownership, excluding people from the land, and then very few people getting to destroy it. And so I guess my impetus for joining, like getting involved with the Right to Roam was, if I'm truly to help protect nature, people need to get back out into nature and be like, okay, this is ours. And yeah, I just called Guy Shrubsole one day and I said, I think I'm into this. Let's have a meeting. And then he said, you need to meet Nick. I met Nick, and I was like, Nick, I think I'm going to organise the biggest trespass of people of colour in our history. And he was like, cool, let's do this. And then after about a year of moonlighting, getting paid by the RSPB, but working for Right to Roam, we shouldn't say that, what they're going to do now, I quit my job and started working for Right to Roam.
That's really cool. That's another really cool thing I've started noticing as well. Like, there's a few lads, I can't remember the name, I follow them on Instagram and stuff like that, just black lads going into nature and being like, why are we not doing this? You know, it's like, for whatever reason, it's not part of certain, well, it is certain. I know plenty of lads from my way that do it, but like more like London and like big city like lads. Yeah. And I thought that's just such a cool thing, you know what I mean? Because it is for everybody.
It's such an important radical act.
Yeah,
but it's because our countryside is coded. Our countryside is coded as quintessential Britishness. Yeah. It's like pure Victoria sponge cake. Yeah. And like,
but that's buzz. That's not the real England. The real England is just going into the fucking
going into
forest.
It, fishing, like camping and climbing trees and like having a fire and like not going on a hike to like burn 1,000 calories.
I know.
Just going into a field, sitting having a picnic or sharing some food. You know, like I'm really concerned about how green space and actually like, you know, a lot of like second or third generation people that have moved to the UK have got a closer ancestry to living in, spending time in rural areas and growing food than like white British people who are here. So, but the countryside is coded that if you can afford it and you can pay for the Arc'teryx Patagonia gear, you can go out of a weekend, hike for 2 days, pay for the campsite and go. It's like a product that you go and do if you're middle class and you go home. It's not really like a place that you commune or do things like. It does concern me, like there's a park in Camden that's recently stopped people having barbecues. And I'm like, you know, humans going into nature to eat and gather as a community and share food and share stories is one of the most beautiful things that the outdoors is for. It's not about like a weekend camping in the Lake District and going to like a tea room, you know, and it's just like starting to really challenge how different communities spend their time outdoors and use outdoors and what's still today being taken away from people. It's never stopped. Yeah. It's continuing to be taken away.
Yeah, well, that's a perfect example. I mean, okay, don't have the fire here, don't eat, don't chat, but I guarantee they're all over Instagram being like, look at this event we put on or whatever, and it's like...
Build barbecues then. Build brick barbecues where then no one has to build them in, so then you're inviting people to come and share food.
They wouldn't dare. They wouldn't do a thing like that.
They do in Scotland.
They do in Scotland.
In Scotland, there's like, you go to like park ups, and there's got benches where half of the bench furniture is like a metal sheet, knowing that people will put a disposable barbecue on it. You know, design it so people do the right thing. If you don't, don't just ban something. We're so into this mindset of like, there's a bad thing happened, ban it. I was like, oh, how do we encourage people to do it in a better way?
Yeah. If people want to get involved with Right to Roam, just anybody, what's the best way they can start?
Best thing that people can do is, as an initial point, is sign up to the newsletter, because then we just update you on like trespass actions, things that are happening in government, etc. And then we do have a network of local groups across England, so you can join your local group and start feeling what it is to get out trespassing and just learn about what the Right to Roam is. There's heaps of information on the website, but really just start trying to recognise that if your mindset is that I don't belong, that's changeable. You do belong, and to find ways to get outdoors and spend time in nature, wherever that might be, and start recognising that the land beneath our feet is our land, it's nobody else's, and we can take it back.
I love that message. Like, you common man and woman, it's like, it's ours. That is ours. Yeah, we might not have access to it, but it's still ours. You know what I mean?
We wouldn't think that about the NHS. No. Like, there's everyone's like, the NHS is ours, it's for everybody. The land is the same. Like, we need to have that, we can have that cultural shift.
Thank you so much, Nadia. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Really nice.
Yeah, it's really great.